Coming up next here on the Metal Command podcast, the Kings of Thrash have released their first single. Burton C Bell, former Fear Factory singer, releases a single. Iron Maiden has begun the Run for Your Lives tour and does not want you using cell phones. And I talk about how bands can help promote themselves better and how PR people can better promote their clients. All of that coming up next here on the Metal Command podcast.
You are listening to the Metal Command podcast.
Greetings and welcome back to another edition of the Metal Command podcast. Tony here with you. Again, as always, I'm always excited to see everybody today. And if you do want to support the show and you want to support the podcast and you like what you see and hear on this show, by all means, hit that subscribe button, like this video, hit that little bell to be notified anytime I do post any kind of content. And if you follow this show on any other form of social media or streaming service, hit the like and or follow button there. Have a lot to get to. As always, Iron Maiden, of course, has begun their Run for Your Lives tour. The set list, for whatever reason, has pissed some people off. And on top of it, they have, they've started playing shows with their new drummer, which I'll get into as well. And they don't want people using cell phones at their shows. So I have a lot of thoughts on that. We have a new single by Burton C Bell, former Fear Factory singer, one of my favorite vocalists, and it's a song called Savages. I will give you my thoughts on that. I'm going to talk about how bands can better promote themselves and how PR people can help better promote their clients and gain attention from people like myself and other media people out there. But first, let me get into the topic that is being talked about quite a bit here on social media, and that is the Kings of Thrash song, the new single on their upcoming album, off of their upcoming album that they are going to be putting out. It's called Lockdown. And I've listened to this song a few times, and this song has had a lot of negative comments directed towards it. So for those that don't know what Kings of Thrash actually is, it was a band playing Megadeth covers. You have Jeff Young, the former guitar player from Megadeth, played on one album, So Far So Good So What. Obviously, we know who David Ellefson is, and he's been out of Megadeth for quite some time now. And obviously, he is in this band. And those two guys started this band. They were basically playing Megadeth covers for the most part. This song called Lockdown also features a guest guitar player in Chris Poland, who obviously played on the first two Megadeth albums. And the song has garnered some negative criticism, quite a bit actually. And after listening to it, I'm agreeing with the criticism. Actually, I'm really very disappointed in this song. I'm not like angry about it. Like some people are like pissed off thinking it sucks and you see all these comments about it. But I think the song is very disappointing for a number of reasons. And it also highlights something else for me. The fact that just because you are very good at playing your instrument and you are very proficient at it, and you've been proficient at playing your instrument for a very, very long time, because you are talented in that aspect, it does not mean you are a great songwriter. And vice versa. There are great songwriters who are not great instrumentalists compared to other people in the band that they are in. That's just a fact of life in the music world. And when I say this about this track, Lockdown, this is not an indictment on the ability these guys have to play their instruments. I think David Ellefson's an exceptional bass player. He has played in a lot of great projects, since being out of Megadeth. Jeff Young is an exceptional guitar player. So is Chris Poland. In fact, you're not getting into Megadeth unless you are a talented player. Let's just put it that way. So this has nothing to do with their playing ability. These guys are obviously professionals. They've been doing this for a very, very long time. And as far as playing their instruments, they are exceptional at doing that. What they are not exceptional at doing is writing great songs. I think that this song itself, the production I don't think sounds great. I don't think it's well written. I'm not a fan of the vocals on the track. And it's actually a disappointment. And I'm going to explain to you why it is a disappointment to myself. I don't know the resume of Chris Poland and Jeff Young. I really don't know what they've really done since leaving Megadeth. I don't know. Okay. They're both good guitar players. But I'm going to highlight some of the things David Ellefson has done. And David Ellefson was a very nice guy when he came on my show. I enjoyed speaking to the guy. I have nothing but good things to say about the dude, as far as him as a person and actually speaking to him. But let me go down the list of projects that he's done that, in my opinion, are a lot better than this. And it'll illustrate why I'm so disappointed. So David Ellefson has taken, he's been in some bands and projects in between his stints with Megadeth. And I'm going to list them out, at least some of them. He was in a band, Ellefson Soto. If you haven't heard that album, there was an album with him and Jeff Scott Soto. If you haven't heard that, I think that's one of the most incredible records I've ever heard. I was shocked at how good that album was and how many times I would listen to it. So you have that project. He was part of Metal Allegiance, and I'm talking David Ellefson here. Metal Allegiance is an incredible project. Lots of great names in there, and the music, I thought, was exceptional. David Ellefson was, after Megadeth had broken up, like in the early 2000s, he was in a band called F5. I don't know if you all remember that. Had a couple records come out. Believe it or not, I thought that band was pretty solid and pretty good. At the time, I mean, it wasn't anything groundbreaking, but I went back and revisited those two albums that I have, and I think that band was actually pretty solid. He's in a band called The Lucid. No, not really quite the same as like playing in Megadeth or some of the heavy metal bands Dave has played in, but I think for the music they wrote, pretty solid. A band called Death, a little bit heavier. Not that band's style of music really is not my thing, but for that type of heavy metal, I think that band sounds exceptional. So you have all of these really cool projects and bands this guy has been in, and then they put out this song, which has garnered a lot of negative reaction. The fact, the disappointing thing about it is that I just listed off a lot of great bands Dave has been in, David Ellefson. Then, of course, you have Megadeth. It's a letdown. I can't, when I listened to this and I thought back about all of the stuff David Ellefson has done and how much better everything he has done in the past, and I believe some of these bands he's still doing stuff with them, it's a big disappointment. It really is. It also explains to people why these guys were not really the main songwriters of Megadeth. Again, you can be a very proficient player on your instrument. It does not equate to great songwriting. And on top of that, guys that have been in bands like that, you would figure they could do better than this. Because when I listened to the song, you know what the first thing I thought of was? Aside from the fact I didn't think it was very good. I thought, man, these guys could do so much better, especially David Ellefson, who's been in some really exceptional projects. I mean, some of you may not know any of those projects. Some of you may not like them. I personally like most of what the guy has done when he hasn't been in Megadeth. I really have. And I've always said, and I think I said this in the interview I did with him a couple years ago, I said, look, I think it's great that he's not in Megadeth anymore because he can explore these other musical avenues. The Lucid, for example, is really nothing like anything he's really done, right? And I think that band's pretty good, to be honest. That Ellefson Soto album really hit home with me. I still listen to that every once in a while. It's really that good of a record. Now, some of that has to do with Jeff Scott Soto being a great vocalist, but the songwriting is great. The songwriting in Metal Allegiance, I think, is great. The songwriting in Dieth in the Lucid, the songwriting in these bands is great. I think the F5 band was decent for what it was. And then we hear this. I respect the fact that these guys are great players. But look, folks, I'm going to be honest with you, as I always am. I'm going to call balls and strikes, as we say here in America. I'm going to call things for what they are. I really don't think the song is that great. Is it as bad as the Dark Angel single that came out? Absolutely not. But I'll be honest with you, I'm a little bit disappointed in this track. Now, let me state something here. The scary part about this is that they have an album coming out and that this is the first thing these guys wanted us to hear. But at the same time, I do not judge an album by the single. I'm going to beat a dead horse here. I've always said record labels and bands, especially nowadays, seem to pick some of the worst songs on their album. So the album might actually be a lot better than this song, or it might be worse. We don't know. Not a fan of the production, but good songwriting can typically override production for me. That's my personal opinion and preference. We shall see. Because the verdict is still out. I'm not going to judge an album until I actually hear the entire thing. But from what I'm listening to on this song, it does not sound promising whatsoever. At all. So we'll see where this Kings of Thrash thing goes. We will see where this album goes when it comes out. Obviously, I'll hear a promo of it at some point, but it ain't looking good, folks. I'll be honest with you. And comparing, let's take Megadeth out of the equation. Looking at all of the other projects David Ellefson has done and been a part of, this is by far, in my opinion, the worst thing I've ever heard from him. And it's probably one of the only bad things that I thought, it's one of the only things he's ever done, in my opinion, that I haven't liked. Everything else, even if it's not my style of music, you're like, okay, yeah, it's not bad. This is kind of like, not good. And I've brought up bands with former members of bands or current members of bands. Most of the time, these projects aren't great. Every once in a while, they are good. This is definitely not. So that's my opinion. I'm curious as to what all of you think about this Kings of Thrash song called Lockdown. You can post your comments, whether you agree or disagree with me. That's fine. I'm curious as to what you like or dislike about this song. Because for me, mainly, it's the songwriting and the production. I mean, it's really that simple. Not a big fan of the vocals, but, if the song was a little bit better and if the production sounded better, the vocals could be passable. But needless to say, I'm disappointed. Let's move on to another topic. This topic is all about how bands can better promote themselves and how PR people can better promote their clients. Folks, I'm going to give you a couple examples of what draws the attention of people like myself and other media people out there to check out a band that either the band themselves is promoting them, promoting themselves, or a PR person is promoting them. I've always said, nobody really cares about your music unless you give them a reason to care about your music. So I'm going to give you two examples from two different PR people who I have a lot of respect for, of things that they do to help their clients. And I'm going to bring up an example of a band who out of nowhere drew my attention in like no independent brand new band has in a very, very long time. Okay. So, how do you get the attention of a person like myself to talk about your band, to care about your band, to care about your music? Because you can write the greatest record in the world, but the bottom line is nobody's going to care about it unless you give them a reason to, unless you draw their attention to your product. You know, I've always said that people should treat their band as a small business or as a business in general. Treat it as if you are starting your own business from scratch, because they call it the music business for a reason, right? They call it the music business because that is what it is. And you have to build a fan base, because people aren't going to have anything to do with you unless they feel they can make money with you or off of you. That is the cold, harsh reality of the music business. That's how it is. And when you're a band, it is very, very important when you're looking at a PR person to, one, look at their track record. Who have they worked with? Who have they helped move the needle for? Number two, you have to find a PR person that is going to be straight up honest with you. They aren't going to kiss your ass for the sake of doing so. They're going to give you the cold, harsh truth of what you need to do to further yourself. You know, a lot of these PR people, folks, I can tell you, I deal with a lot of these PR people. I see their emails. There are people that are afraid to tell a band the truth. You can't have a friend do your PR. You have to have somebody that is going to be 100% honest with you, even if it's what you don't want to hear. And lastly, what is their strategy? What do they do to help promote their clients? I'm going to give you a couple examples, and I'm going to use names. I normally don't use names, but these two guys, in my opinion, are two of the best people that I've ever encountered. And I'm also going to give you an example of how a band did this by themselves. This band now has a publicist, but how they garnered my interest by themselves by doing one simple thing. So I'm going to start off with somebody that you've heard me mention before, who has done a lot of great PR work for a very long time. That would be Michael Brandvold. Michael Brandvold has a podcast, a music business podcast, which I'll link here in the show notes. Michael really started out, from what I gather, back during the dial-up internet days. Now, what do I mean by that? Late 90s. He was doing work for Kiss. That was around the time I started doing what I was doing, not only with my radio show, but I was doing Halloween's website. This was well before we had social media. So him and I sort of come from the same place in a sense, because that's around the time we really started doing the things that we do. The reason I'm bringing him up, he does all the PR work for BravewordsRecords, but this is not why I'm bringing the guy up. I'm bringing the guy up because he does something that almost no publicist does. Now, folks, most people that have been around a long time, or most of these publicists, they send you a standard email. It'll have a link at the end of it with an electronic press kit that you can get to listen to the band's music and bio. They'll send a subject line, band releases this album. They have the cookie cutter bio in there. Most of the time, they aren't very well written. And then you have a link, and that's it. Now imagine having like 100 or 200 different people sending you this stuff, and your email box blowing up with about 1,000 emails a day. It's almost impossible for me to pay attention to all of that. And I'm not the only one that deals with this. A lot of other people deal with this as well. So the reason I'm bringing up Michael is he does one thing, one very good thing that draws the attention of people like myself and others. When you look at his emails, he'll have a bio, like everybody else does. But after he gives out the information from the band, if you look through the email, you will see a list of quotes from positive reviews given by various media people. And he will put that in the email. He'll list it out. Like my show. Like I'll give you an example. Like if you look at the new Jack Starr album on BravewordsRecords, he has a list of people that have reviewed the album and puts a quote from them. Puts a quote to their, basically says what publication or media outlet they are from. And that is listed in there. The reason I think that is important, number one, is that, number one, if I start seeing all these positive reviews, let's say that my name or quote isn't in there, but I start looking at an album from a band I've never heard of, or an album I've never heard of. When I start seeing these reviews listed in there, I think to myself, you know what? What are all these people talking about? What is the hype about? Because it's one thing to get an email with a generic bio and a link to an electronic press kit. I can get those all day. It's another thing to read actual quotes from reviewers, because then I see, okay, somebody's talking about this. Let's go and check out this album. And this is why, again, when I brought up BravewordsRecords, a reason why, if you are a band, they would be a great fit for you if you're willing to put the work in, because of this kind of promotion strategy. This is what I'm talking about. And then if I'm a podcaster, let's say I like it. Let's say I like the album and I write a review on it. Guess what? He's now going to put my name in that email that is reaching an untold number of people, quite a few people actually. So not only is he giving exposure back to my podcast, but he is obviously expanding exposure for the band, because now more people are paying attention to that email. Because when I look at the emails he sent me, you see that positive review list grow. And the more that review list grows, the more that he shares those reviews on Facebook and all the other, in like YouTube and all of the other social media outlets, the more that band's name gets in the algorithms, and the more people are going to pay attention to it. And that is where I'm going to go to the next example of a band that did this exact thing. They didn't do it through the email. They did it on social media. And again, Michael does a great job. He is on point. Anybody that reviews an album or talks about anything he's promoting, the guy is sharing it everywhere. Doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter if it's me, another podcaster. Doesn't matter if it's somebody that, might have 100 followers or 1 million. All of it is going everywhere. He's sharing it everywhere. Through his emails, social media, everywhere. And that draws attention not only from people like myself, which make me now more inclined to read all of his emails, but it makes me want to check out that band that much more when I see all those reviews listed in there. Now, I brought up an example of a band that did something very, very similar to this, that pretty much came out of nowhere and ended up selling out pretty much all of their physical merchandise as a result of the way they promoted themselves. And this is before they really hired an actual publicist here in the States. So you guys saw me review an album by a band called Beholder. Beholder is a power metal / doom metal band. Folks, I had never heard of any of the guys in this band. I heard of John Yellen, the singer, because he's in a band called Judicator, but I'd never really heard of this band or any of these guys. And I don't know what it was, but in my timeline, I kept seeing this band Beholder popping up in my feed. And every time it would pop up, they were sharing. They had a whole graphic actually put up, and they were sharing a review, a positive review of their upcoming album called In the Temple of the Tyrant, which is out now, from every single publication or podcast that said anything positive about it. It didn't matter if that podcast or media outlet had 1 follower or 1 million. They were sharing it in a very elaborate graphic. They were putting a quote from that publication or media outlet on their Facebook page, and they were just sharing every single one. Boom, boom. Like every day I'd go in there, there'd be like 10 reviews. Now, this is a band on a small record label. I believe they're from Sweden. I could be wrong. Black Lion Records. But they were doing this. And I'm looking at this and I'm seeing all these reviews. I'm like, there's got to be something to this band that's drawing people in. And so they put a single out. I went and listened to the single. I'm like, my God, this is really, really good. What did that do? All of those positive reviews being shared. I looked at that. I bypassed all of the other generic emails in my email box or in the message box on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. I went straight to that band, seeing all those reviews being posted, because I got to see what is all the hype about. Folks, let me tell you, first of all, they drew my attention in, and it made me listen very closely to their music. And you know what? I think it's one of the most incredible albums that's come out this year. And this is a band nobody's heard of before. Now, if you sell out your physical copies of your merchandise, are you selling tons and tons of units? No. But to do that your first time out is a testament to how hard those guys were willing to work to get the name of the band out there. I got a hold of these guys. They came on the show. The interview was tremendous. Carlos Alvarez, the guitar player, by the way, folks, very, very knowledgeable with the heavy metal scene. Absolutely. Him and I, like if I were to go and talk to a guy about our taste in music, we like a lot of the same bands. And he's very knowledgeable, has been following the scene for a long time. I would have never heard of this guy if they had never promoted themselves the way that they did. Now, I believe they have a PR person now, but my God, that is a band to watch out for, because they had to do another run of merchandise, which, by the way, all of the merchandise that I have, especially the vinyl album, the vinyl version of the album, the quality is top notch. But these guys were willing to go out there and promote themselves, and that's exactly what they did. And here's why that strategy works. Here's why a guy like Michael Brandvold and his emails, and why Beholder propping up all these media outlets, this is why this strategy works. Because here's what happens. You have people that follow these podcasts, again, whether they have a 1 follower or 1 million. And what happens is that one person is going to tell 20 people about this band. That one person is going to say, hey, my buddy's in a band, he needs PR. And the people that draw attention in like that are the ones that are going to get the recommendations. That's how it is. When you start drawing attention to yourself as a band, that's when promoters start to notice you. That is when you start getting noticed by other people in bands. That is when you start networking. Because the more attention you draw to yourself, the more that following will grow, and you have to be relentless with it. And that is what Beholder did to draw me in. So out of the thousands of emails getting sent to me, this one band comes out of nowhere and does something very simple. Out of the thousands of emails sent to me, you have one PR guy, Michael Brandvold, doing something very simple to draw my attention to the artists that he is helping to promote. This is why I think BravewordsRecords is going to do very well and is going to grow really well, because they have people like this, like Michael and Giles and all those guys, really putting this kind of strategy in place to help bands. You know, they got some veteran bands on there, but it'll be interesting to see who the label signs. But these are the ways to draw attention to people like myself. Let me go to the next part of this segment. And another thing that I think a PR person does to really help bands, and this probably applies more to unknown bands than anything. Curtis Dewar. Now, Curtis Dewar owns C Squared Music. You've heard me mention them before. I've shared some clips from their podcast before. Justin Roth, I almost consider Justin part of my show at this point, who comes on as a guest every once in a while, the guitar player from Workhorse. They have a show called the Heavy Business Podcast, which is very good. But Curtis does something quite quite interesting. I've never seen anybody do before. And it's really meant probably for the more unknown bands, like bands that are more independent, that he will take on. He does surveys. Now, what do I mean by surveys? Well, what he does is he finds media people like myself, and if we have time, we take these surveys about the band. You look at the band, you listen to the band's music, and you have a lot of questions in there, like asking about, does this band's image fit their music, like the image in their press photos? What genre or subgenre of heavy metal do you consider this band? Things like that. What can this band do better? What can they do better with their image? Or do you think their image and their press photos look great the way they are? Folks, I can tell you I'm a photographer. I've been doing this a long time. People like myself will take those surveys when I can. At least I will, because I want to help these bands out. Even if it's a genre of heavy metal I'm not into, I've heard and seen it all at this point. But what it does, I mentioned before, you have to have somebody that's going to be honest and give you the harsh reality of your situation, whether it's good or bad, whether it's what you want to hear or what you don't want to hear. And these surveys, and then Curtis, of course, being involved with who he's involved with, he does a lot of the promotion for Raining Phoenix Music. The thing is, he is helping bands gauge their audience, who their actual audience actually is, and what they need to do to improve upon themselves. It's one of the services he offers. Like, again, all the bands that I've ever done I've ever filled a survey out for, and these surveys are pretty in-depth. It's not like there's 5 questions and you're done. I mean, I probably spent on one band probably at least a half an hour, maybe 45 minutes, because I got to listen to the music, and then I take the survey. But I think he is somebody that will share that information. He's got a very good grasp of the heavy metal scene. And these types of things help bands gauge their audience and really figure out, okay, we need to do this better and that better. And in turn, those strategies can be used to gauge attention from people like myself. Folks, I can tell you that what these guys do, I think more record labels need to start doing this. One of the things record labels do that I think is very, very short-sighted. They'll share information nonstop about an upcoming album. Then when that album comes out, you don't hear about it anymore. Record labels need to start spreading out their social media posts if they really want to promote new releases. They need to start posting reviews, like I explained earlier, on their page. They start sharing. If they shared reviews from publicists, whether the media outlet is known or well-known or not so well-known, record labels would greatly increase their exposure and grow themselves a lot better. I can tell you flat out, most labels don't do that. Ultimately, in the end, it is the responsibility of the PR person and the band to both work just as hard to promote the music. But ultimately, the PR person can only do as much as a band will give them. Bands should be relentlessly working their asses off to provide content for a PR person who should also be working their ass off to promote that music just as hard as that band is busting their ass to create the music and create the content to give to that PR guy. So, PR guy or girl. So, like, content, for example, doing a playthrough on a song. Let's say you're a drummer and you have a song out. You're a drummer in a band. You do a drum playthrough or a guitar playthrough or tell a story about a song. Record it yourself, send it to your publicist. The more stuff you send them, the more they can promote you. The more interviews you do, regardless of whether that media outlet has 1 follower or 1 million, the more people are going to talk about you. Because again, each person may tell 10, 20, 30 people about your band. That's what needs to happen to get people to, for a lack of a better term, give a shit about your music. Because nobody does unless you give them a reason to care about it. I brought up an example of a band in Beholder that did just that. When I post about them, I noticed more and more responses, more and more people discovering them. Because they were willing to go out and prop up the people who are taking the time to check out their music and review it, which is what draws the attention in. Anyhow, that's my advice to bands and PR people, and those are some examples of people who do a fantastic job in PR. And, of course, a great example of an outstanding and talented band in Beholder of how they drew attention from people like myself and did it basically coming out of nowhere. Anyway, I'm going to go into the break. Coming up, I'm going to talk about Iron Maiden and the Run for Your Lives tour. I'm going to talk about their set list, which seems to have pissed some people off for whatever reason. And I'm going to talk about them not wanting people to use cell phones in the audience. And I'm going to talk about the new Burton Bell single, Savages. All of that coming up next here after the break on the Metal Command podcast. I'll be right back after this. Hey everybody, it's Tony here from the Metal Command podcast. I appreciate you watching this program, and if you want to see more of what I offer on this show, please by all means hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell to be notified anytime I do post a video, follow me on any other social media outlet that you see this program, and again, I appreciate all of your support. Welcome back everybody to the Metal Command podcast. Tony here with you. And let's get into the next topic. Let's talk about Iron Maiden and the Run for Your Lives tour, which kicked off in Europe. And they played their first show in Budapest, Hungary. And, of course, there was a set list reveal of what they played. And for some reason, we have a lot of backlash towards that set list. Not only do we have a lot of backlash towards the set list on this tour, but there are people, a multitude of people, complaining about Simon Dawson, the new drummer, complaining about the fact they think his drum kit is too small. And then we have the band asking people to stay in the moment, as they put it, and not to have their cell phones out during a concert. Okay, so I have a lot of takes on this. Let's talk about the set list. And let's talk about Simon Dawson for a minute here. So I'm looking at the set list. Folks. I don't know what the problem is with it. I don't know why people are complaining about this. But let's go through the set list. And I'm going to go through each of these songs and tell you what I think. So, they led off with Murders in a Rue Morgue, then went to Wrathchild and Killers. So they start off the show with 3 songs from Killers. Now, personally, as an Iron Maiden fan, I'm good with that. Murders in a Rue Morgue is a really cool song to begin the show with. And then they go into Phantom of the Opera. So 4 songs that Paul Di'Anno originally sang on. I'm going to guess they did that as a tribute to Paul. That's just my theory. Not 100% sure if that's what they are doing or not, but that's what it feels like to me. And to be perfectly honest, I think those are 4 great songs to begin the show off with. I mean, one of the reasons I love, for example, Beast Over Hammersmith, the live album from 1982, is that I believe they begin it off with Murders in a Rue Morgue. So you have 4 songs from their first 2 albums. How can you really go wrong with that? They don't play Murders in a Rue Morgue that often. I think the last time they did was about 20 years ago. But it's definitely a cool song to throw into the set every now and then. That's very atypical to their set. Songs like Wrathchild. I mean, Wrathchild's been in that set probably way more often than not. I think they play it practically every show. Not all the time, but it gets a lot of play from them live. Killers has been in the set off and on. In the early first half of the band's career, it was definitely played quite a bit, but sporadically it's ended up in the set as well. Phantom of the Opera is kind of along the same lines. Every once in a while they'll throw it in the set. And I don't have a problem with any of those 4 songs. So let's go to the next part of the set list. Number of the Beast. I mean, how are you not going to play that, right? Clairvoyant is the song they played after that off of Seventh Son. Very popular track by the band. We have Power Slave, 2 Minutes to Midnight, and Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. Again, 3 super classic songs that, pretty much every Iron Maiden fan loves. We have Run to the Hills, of course. Not surprising. The one song I was a little surprised to see was Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, the title track off of that album. And then you have The Trooper, Hallowed Be Thy Name, and of course, the song Iron Maiden. I don't understand I do not understand what is wrong with this set list. Like, people are all pissed off and flipping out about it, and we want to hear songs like, we want to hear songs like Loneliness of a Long Distance Runner, and, you see people throwing these set lists, these different, these songs the band hasn't played in a very, very long time. First of all, anyone complaining about this should stop and think and realize that we are lucky this band is still breathing and playing shows still. Because when you get guys that are getting up in their late 60s and getting into their 70s, typically bands don't stick around this long. So first of all, anyone complaining about this, you should be grateful the band is still out playing gigs. Because there are a lot of legendary bands that we will never get to see again who are not around anymore. And when I say not around, I'm talking about people that have passed on. For example, let's say Lemmy from Motorhead. Motorhead, obviously, long gone. Dio is gone. Lots of bands that are not around, or the guys haven't passed away. They just broke up. They don't play shows anymore. So first of all, we should be grateful Iron Maiden is still out playing shows, playing gigs, and doing what they do best at a very, very high level. Let me get that out of the way. The second thing is, folks, Iron Maiden is a band that, as of today, it's 2025, they have been putting out albums since 1980. So for 45 years, Iron Maiden has been putting out albums, which means you have quite a few songs to pick from. And let's be honest, you're never going to be happy with the set list 100%. They have so many songs to choose from. There are so many other great songs that have been in the set list in the past, even on the last tour, that aren't on there. Like they played Alexander the Great, a song that everybody has wanted to hear for a long time live. They'd never played it live. They finally started playing it. It's not in this set list, but they did play it quite a few times. You're just never going to be happy. And if you are a band like Iron Maiden, you are going to pick the songs that are pretty popular and maybe throw 1 or 2 songs in there that you normally don't throw into the set list. So, for example, in this set list, Murders in the Rue Morgue, not a song that they've performed a lot in the past. It's been very, very sporadic. Like I said, I'd like to say in 2005 they played it. I could be wrong on that, but I believe they did. So you're not going to make everybody happy. You have hundreds of songs to choose from. And what they're going to do is put songs in the set list people want to hear. The songs that have done very well for them over the years. Now, luckily, they have a lot of those kinds of songs out there in their catalog. Everything on here is from the first album through Seventh Son. That streak of Iron Maiden albums, you have numerous tracks you can put on there, you can pick from. And it can be difficult. So, they put the title track of the Seventh Son album in there. That's not one you typically see all the time. And you have Murders in a Rue Morgue in there. That's not a song you see that often. Phantom of the Opera is a song that's, they don't play it. I mean, they do play it, but it's not typically in the set list all the time. And then you have the songs everybody wants to hear. Run to the Hills, Number of the Beast, 2 Minutes to Midnight. Songs like that. The Trooper, that's another one. So they are going to put the songs that made them popular in the set list. That's what bands do. So I guess I don't get the outrage over the set list. I think the set list is fine. You threw a couple tracks in there that you don't play too often. I don't get the complaining. Another thing I think is very stupid that people are complaining about is Simon Dawson's drum kit being too small. Folks, why does that even matter? I mean, Nico's drum kit, was it pretty big? Absolutely. But why do you care about that? I mean, maybe it's me, but when I go to see a band play live, I want them to play the songs correctly, obviously, and I want the songs to sound great. And I watched some of the video where you saw Simon Dawson playing. I think he sounded pretty good. I mean, folks, give this guy a break. These are like his first gigs with Maiden. It's one thing to play in Steve Harris's solo band in British Lion, playing in small clubs. It's another thing to become the drummer of one of the biggest heavy metal bands of all time and play on that stage. Give the guy a break, folks. The guy just started playing gigs with Maiden. One of the things that I think if you're a non-musician, if you're a musician, you understand this, but if you are a non-musician, one of the things that musicians will tell you, whether it's a guitar player, keyboard player, drummer, whatever, they're going to play what they feel comfortable with. And when I say play what they feel comfortable with, I'm talking about the instruments that they're playing. Certain guitar players, for example, they like certain brands of guitars that have a low action on them. Some people might have, issues with the tendons in their wrist. They may want a guitar with low action. Like an Ibanez, like some of the Ibanez 7 strings are like that. And drummers will tell you that they put a kit together. And when they put that kit together, it fits their comfort level of how they want to play. So Simon Dawson may not want a gigantic kit because he normally doesn't play on something like that. Personally, I don't care what kind of drum kit the guy plays on. As long as he plays the songs correctly, I'm cool with that. Now, is it different not seeing Nico up there with them after all these years? Absolutely. Keep in mind, this band has not had tons and tons of member changes over the last 45 years. I mean, if you think about it, Bruce was out of the band for a little bit, obviously. But Nico has been in the band since the Peace of Mind album. Up until now. And we have a new drummer. First new drummer since 1983 playing these shows and playing these gigs. Give the guy a break. These are his first shows. So lastly, let me go into probably the biggest part of this topic that has caused the controversy, and that is the band putting out a statement saying they really don't want people using cell phones at their concerts. And that has caused a little bit of an outrage, people complaining about it, whining about it. And, I'll tell you what, one of the ironies about this, folks, I'm a photographer. Now, I haven't really done tons of concert photography, but big reason for that is I just don't like the BS associated with doing it. All the stupid stipulations. You can only, you have stipulations like you can only take photos in the first couple songs, for example. And what used to drive me nuts about that is a photographer, a professional photographer, can only take photos for the first couple tracks and has to stand a certain distance away. But you have everybody with their cell phone all concert, like throughout the entire show, lifting the cell phone up, taking flash photos with the cell phone. Yet if you're a photographer, you're limited to 2 songs and no flash photography, which I don't do. I don't like flash photography for concerts anyway. But nevertheless, on most of these stipulations, when you're a concert photographer, you deal with that. Now, some are a little bit ridiculous, like you have to be all the way at the back of the venue with a giant telephoto lens to get photos. I mean, there are some of those as well. You even get some of these bands that say you have to surrender the copyright of your photos. I've seen that before. I just don't get into concert photography. It's not my thing. But what I think is funny is Iron Maiden, or people getting angry over Iron Maiden requesting people not to use cell phones. I look at this from 2 different angles. The first angle is I understand where the band is coming from. They want to connect to the audience. They want the audience to focus on them and to be caught in the moment and enjoy the show for what it is. I understand that because I used to go to shows before smartphones existed, and I get being caught in the moment because I have been, especially when I was younger and I was really getting into these bands. I mean, a good example would be Bruce Dickinson and his tour in 1997. There were like 200 people there, but I was caught in the moment. I focused strictly on them, and the show went by, like, it felt like it went by in 10 minutes. That's how into the show that I was. On the flip side, times have changed. I could see where someone in the audience would want a memory of that show and wants to record it for 30 seconds throughout the show, whatever they want to do. So I understand where some of that outrage comes from, because, look, you're focusing on the band tactically, but it's done in a different manner. You know, like the cell phone has replaced the cigarette lighter. Everybody remember, like back in the old days, you had the people with the cigarette lighters. The lights would go out and everybody raised the cigarette lighter up. Usually they had a Zippo, and you would see the flames in the crowd. The cell phone has pretty much replaced that for the most part. Here's my take on it. And bands are definitely probably not going to like my take on it, but my take on it is let people enjoy the show the way they want to enjoy it. Being caught in a moment, for example, in 2025 is a lot different than it was in 1985. It just is. Now, I get it. If I was on stage and people were taking all these videos or taking flashes of me while I'm trying to sing, look, I get it. I get where the bands come from. But ultimately, a band is nothing without their fans. Now, I personally don't take smartphones and raise them up when I go to shows or anything. I don't really do that. I focus on the band. I might take a couple photos, maybe if that. But I don't go into a crowd holding up my phone the whole time. To me, that's insane. But again, it's a much younger crowd. It's a different time. Let your fans that are paying their hard-earned money, paying a lot of money to buy your merchandise, paying a lot of money for tickets to your shows, let them enjoy the show the way they want to, within reason, obviously. And if they want to take a photo or a video with a cell phone, I don't see a problem with it. I don't understand why Iron Maiden would do that, but I actually disagree with their take on it. Like, if they're going to go and ban phones, I think that's ridiculous. That's just me. I'm not a big fan of the cell phone thing, but it is what it is. Again, people are paying a lot more money for tickets to go see you than they were 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. They are paying for $50 t-shirts, if not more than that. If they want to use their smartphone, let them. And that's where I stand with that. Do I agree? Like I said, do I think people should be holding up their phone? Do I think they should be caught in the moment? and not have their phone in the ear? Absolutely. I absolutely do not like taking my phone to a show and to take focus away from the show by taking videos with it and all that stuff. But that's my preference. Not everybody's like that. So let bygones be bygones. If these people pay that money for the show, if they want to use their smartphone, let them. Let them enjoy the show and the memory the way that they want to. And the other thing I've noticed too, and I've been backstage for shows with some pretty big bands in the past, most of these people are not holding their cell phone up the whole time. They might hold it up for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. I'm not saying everybody does that, but most of the time it's for short bursts, short recordings. They might take a photo. They're not holding it up 100% of the time. A couple people might do that, but me personally, I don't see that. Now, I could be wrong. There might be shows where people do that the whole time, where it's up there 95% of the time. But I can tell you, not everybody's like that. So there you have it. Let people enjoy the show the way they want to. Let them get caught in the moment the way that they want to, especially with the amount of money they are paying for tickets and your merchandise and the amount of money they pay to support you. Moving on to the last topic. Burton C Bell, former Fear Factory singer, has put out another single. It's called Savages. And he just released that single not long ago. Now, Burton obviously is not in Fear Factory. Burton Bell is one of my favorite frontmen in the metal scene, to be honest. I grew up listening to the music that Burton Bell was a part of. I grew up with Fear Factory. Demanufacture was a great record. That was the first album I ever bought by Fear Factory in the mid-90s when I was in high school. I remember when he sang on the first GZR album. If you don't know what GZR is, that was a band formed by Geezer Butler. It had a kind of a more of a Pantera modern metal type vibe to it, and Burton was the singer on the first album. And I followed him over the years. I actually have met him a couple times when Fear Factory came and played in Cleveland. I sat down in person and did an interview with him. Really, actually, very cool. He's a really laid back, really nice guy, actually. The last time I actually saw him in person and interviewed him in person, I think it was 2015. Fear Factory played with Soilwork. I think Soilwork was the opener on that tour. In fact, it was a fun day because I ended up getting to meet Bjorn Speed Strid and hang out with him backstage. And then, of course, Burton Bell. I think I met Burton first. But nevertheless, incredibly nice guy, talking about personal lives a little bit. We had quite a bit in common as far as interests. He's a really cool dude. So when the whole Fear Factory saga happened, I'll be honest with you. I was, when I say saga, I mean him leaving and all the lawsuits and all the other nonsense that took place that pretty much told him, he pretty much said, screw it. I'm not going to be in the band anymore. I was disappointed, especially with the fact that the last Fear Factory album that he sang on was absolutely phenomenal. And for me, Fear Factory, it's two main guys. It's Dino Cazares and Burton. Those two guys, for me, were the most important guys for that sound. Burton's voice, obviously, being, the singer in the band. And, the two albums that Dino wasn't on, Archetype, and then, the album that was after it, they were missing something. Because when Dino came back, you could feel the band's music get better in a very, very good way with him coming back. So it was sad to see Burton go. They do have another singer who I've seen videos of him singing. I think he does a tremendous job. But now Burton Bell is putting out solo material. And he had a song called Technical Exorcism that I liked quite a bit. I thought it was very, very good. Some of these songs sound a little bit like Fear Factory, but they are a bit different. The song Savages is pretty straightforward, pretty heavy. It sounds great. I like the direction he is going with his solo stuff. Now, he came out, I think, in an interview and said something along the lines of, he's going to be putting out singles, really no full-length albums planned at this time, which is interesting because a lot of bands have talked about maybe only doing EPs, doing digital only. It's not worth going through the doing a whole album or putting out physical product for a whole album. A lot of bands are doing the singles or an EP route only. And again, 84% of all music revenue is coming from streaming. So I understand that mentality. But the song's good. And his solo stuff has been very, very interesting. It's definitely it's heavy like Fear Factory, like Fear Factory is, but it's different. Savages sort of sounds like Fear Factory-ish, like it could be on the album Obsolete maybe. But for the most part, I think it's a lot different. And I really dig the single. So he had a song called Antidroid. That was an interesting song. It came out about a year ago, maybe a little bit over that. But overall, it's cool to see him making music. If I were to give a rating to the song, probably give it about an 8 out of 10. I think it's pretty solid. I think it's good. But nevertheless, I'll put the song in the show notes. I'd love to know what all of you think. Do you like Burton Bell and the direction and the music that he's putting out? Leave a comment. I'm curious what you think. And with that said, that's all I have for you today on the Metal Command podcast. Again, if you do like what you see and hear on this video, by all means, hit subscribe, hit the little bell to be notified anytime I do post any kind of content. And if you follow the show on any other form of social media or streaming service, give the show a thumbs up, a like, or a follow there. Thanks for watching. Stay metal.